We're now live.
The Combined Committee of Whole Operations, Planning Administration is now called to order. I would ask that you rise as you are able for the reading of the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness, where freedom prevails and where justice rules. We acknowledge the rich history of this land, which includes the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples. Today, there are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuits people who live or work in the city. The intent of this acknowledgement is to recognize our responsibility to use and take care of these lands responsibly and respectfully, while remembering the generations past and considering the generations yet to come. We respect and seek to continue and promote the long-standing relationships with this area's First Nations, the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Indigenous peoples who reside within the city of Brantford. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us, so that we can continue to do the work that we must in their memory. Please be seated. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
Through the chair, roll call has been taken.
Members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in items appearing on the agenda? Seeing none. Okay, we will move on. Separated for the item. Separation of items for consideration. 7.1.1 has already been separated as we have a presentation. Is there any other items that anybody would like separated? Seeing none.
Here.
7.1.5. Okay. Councilor Martin, actually, can you please move the motion to approve all these items? The state your seconder.
I move, second by Councilor McCurry, that all items for consideration consent 7.1 and 7.2 not separated for discussion purposes be approved.
Clerk, can you please read the titles?
The items subject to the vote are the following: 7.12 designation of 53 Charlotte Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act and adoption of alternative notice policy. Item 7.14 MAT administration policy. 7.15 Brantford Airport Board report, and 7.21 the minutes.
Okay. Any discussion? Call the vote.
The motion to approve the items not separated for discussion purposes is carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those councillors voting in favor.
No ballot came up here on my screen, just the ending here.
Through the chair to Councillor Mintelberg, if you can please note your vote.
My vote is yes, thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. Those councillors voting in favor are Councillors Mintelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Sicoli, and Mayor Davis.
We have no delegations on tonight's agenda, and we do have a presentation for tonight. So prior to hearing the presentation, I would ask that there be a mover and a seconder to waive the rules, as this event is going to be longer than normal. It's going to take up to 20 minutes. Moved by Councillor Celeste, seconded by Councillor McCurry. Please call the vote, knowing that we need a 2/3 vote.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor: Councillors Mintelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Sicoli, and Mayor Davis.
I would now ask Selvi, Director of Environmental Services, to come forward to present the items regarding 7.1.1, the increasing nitrate levels in the Grand River.
Good evening. My name is Selvi Congera, Director of Environmental Services. With me, Dwayne Ayers, Manager of Water Operations. And we also have online virtually Dr. Comley joining us. With that, I'll start the presentation. Presentation outline. I'll go through background on nitrate levels in the Grand River, sources of nitrate control, actions taken, and the next steps. Background on nitrate. So why are we here? Brantford takes water from the Grand River for its drinking water production. Recently, we're seeing nitrate levels in the Grand River increasing. Conventional water plants cannot remove nitrate. Brantford has a conventional water plant. The drinking water supplied is safe. This presentation here, we're going to explain the proactive steps taken by the city to address the nitrate in the Grand River water. So Brantford has been monitoring nitrate levels in the Grand River for a long time. And this graph here shows nitrate in the water, Grand River water, from 2010 to 2024. That's for the past 14 years. And you can see the numbers going up and down. In the summer, the level is low, around 2 to 3 milligrams per liter. And in the winter, the level used to be around 4 to 6 milligrams per liter in the past. But recently, we're seeing the levels increasing. In January of 2023, we saw the level go up to 8.3. That's the kind of the jagged peak you see. And then 2024, the level went down. But then again, a few weeks ago, on January 1st, 2025, we saw the level of nitrate in the Grand River go up again. And the levels reached almost 9.8 milligrams per liter, even though the 9.8 lasted only for a few hours. So what are the nitrate levels in the drinking water? In 2024, the levels were between 4.5 to 6.7. Recently, in January, we're seeing levels less than 8.7. So I just want to show that the provincial drinking water limit is 10 milligrams per liter, and the nitrate in our drinking water is lower than the provincial limit. So where is nitrate coming from? There are three main sources identified here: agricultural operations, wastewater discharges, stormwater runoff. So the image you have here is on the left side, it shows the livestock density in the Grand River watershed. So this map is the shape of the Grand River watershed. That is the area that drains to the Grand River. So Brantford is located in the far south in this map. And the darker the brown, the more the livestock density. So those darker brown areas in the map are located north of Waterloo. On the right side image shows fertilizer use. Again, you can see north of Waterloo, you see a lot more darker brown areas. That means more fertilizer use in the area. And in the lower level, there is a darker brown on the fertilizer use. That's Weitzman Creek. Now, wastewater plants also discharge nitrate to the Grand River. Brantford wastewater plant also discharges nitrate to the Grand River. The city undertook a feasibility study last year to find out options how to control the nitrate. So there were three different options presented. Approach one is to reduce the concentration right at the source. That is, right at the farm, right at the wastewater plant where it is coming. The second option is find an alternative supply, like groundwater, by drilling wells. The third option is find some treatment that can remove nitrate. So the study looked at various technologies, and identified reverse osmosis treatment as the best solution for Brantford. So with respect to approach one, that is source water protection, the city is working with many agencies. We have a strong relationship with the GRCA, and they've installed recently 2 nitrate probes in the river monitoring stations, one at Brant Park and one at Bridgeport. They act as early warning. What that means is that the nitrate level is continuously recorded, and that information is available online on the GRCA website. Our operator, a water plant operator, would watch for those levels. And when they see the level go up, they'll get ready to close the gates at our canal in Brantford. The city is also working very closely with the Grand Erie Public Health. They've been monitoring our drinking water, and they've developed public health advisory protocols. The city also has developed operational readiness plan, emergency response plan, and communications plan. I'll go through these plans in the next few slides. So when it comes to operations, when the level in the Grand River goes above 8 milligrams per liter, or when we know there is heavy rainfall in the forecast, our water operator will start filling the reservoirs. And you know that our water plant is staffed 24/7, 365 days a year, so they're continuously monitoring. And when the level reaches close to 9.5, that means the drinking water limit of 10, right? So before it reaches there, we'll close the inlet gates to the canal, and we'll use the good water in the reservoirs for public supply. And the reservoirs can provide up to 36 hours of supply in the winter months based on the demand. So if the nitrate level goes above 10 milligrams per liter in the drinking water, public health to issue no drinking water advisory to vulnerable population. And who are the vulnerable population? It is bottle-fed infants less than 6 months old, babies less than 1 year old, and pregnant women. They're roughly 2% of the city's population. And when the advisory is issued, the city will supply bottled water or trucked-in water for the vulnerable population. So the city has immediate solutions and permanent solutions in place. The immediate solution is emergency procurement of trailer-mounted reverse osmosis units, and it'll take 4 to 6 weeks for the city to install it. So we're planning to complete the installation by February 2025, that is next month. And it'll cost close to $900,000 for this winter. And staff will bring back a report to council on this emergency procurement in Q2 of 2025. The permanent solution is addition of a reverse osmosis treatment process. So the design and construction of this process will take roughly 4 to 5 years. And it is estimated to cost $50 to $100 million. It's a very expensive treatment, but it is a robust technology. The city, this is a good investment for the city to add the reverse osmosis process and to modernize the plant. What that is going to give us is it's going to give us the high quality water for our community and also support sustainable growth of our community. The staff will also be seeking provincial and federal grant funding opportunities. Our communication staff have prepared the communication plan, a comprehensive plan by working with the public health. And there is a dedicated city webpage for nitrate, and it has detailed frequently asked questions for public. So this is the last slide. Before I end the presentation, I want to say that the city is committed to providing proactive communication to the community to improve public awareness. And the city is committed to supplying safe drinking water to residents and businesses. I also want to say that the city is lucky to have staff like Dwayne and many other water staff who are dedicated and committed to the city. And they're also, anytime, any emergency, they'll jump in to make sure this water supplied by the city is safe. With that, I'll move on to questions.
Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Elby, for the presentation. And I guess firstly, just to reiterate, the drinking water in Brantford is safe. Our quality of water is very good and it's safe, correct?
Yes.
When I look at the math, I have to question, it's $900,000 a year to have a portable unit to make the water safe. Am I understanding that correctly?
Through you, Chair, we're talking about 900,000 for the winter only.
But is that the only time we need it?
Right now, based on our data, that's what we see, that we see high numbers in the winter months. So we're looking at only to have these units in the winter months until we have permanent treatment process in place.
Okay. Well, it's just, if I look at the temporary, to round it to $1 million a year, if we go permanent, it's 50 to $100 million. So we could go temporary for 50 to 100 years and be safe. Is that not true?
Through you, Chair, the way we will look at that is the temporary unit is only for 3 months. So in case we have higher levels in other months, we have no protection. And if we look at and in the, the availability of the unit may not be available when we want to rent. So there are many risks associated with this temporary system. And even what we're looking at the permanent system is it could give us to our full capacity, like a 50 million liters, whereas the temporary system is around 9 million liters. What that means is, if I put it in perspective, in the winter months, we produce or we supply like 30 million liters, and this temporary unit will give us like 9 million liters, which means we have less than 1/3 of the dilution. But if for the permanent, we'll have our full capacity, which will give us a lot more safety.
Okay. If the parts exceed the 7 particles per liter, is the entire population at risk, or is it just the vulnerable population that's actually at risk?
I would actually ask Dr. Comley. Probably she would probably able to answer that better.
Sure, I'm standing by. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, my video has been turned off, so I don't know if you're able to turn my video on. There we go. Hello. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the question. Essentially, the 10 milligrams per liter, the maximum allowable concentrations that's set for nitrates, is specifically for protection against that vulnerable population group. In particular, bottle-fed infants up to 6 months. The reason why they're more vulnerable is they would acquire a large volume of water per kilogram of their body weight. If you think about how much a bottle-fed infant drinks of water, you can imagine that they would have a high nitrate load if they were drinking high nitrate level water. And they're also, their system is immature to protect themselves against methemoglobinemia. What happens is when we ingest nitrates, they're converted to nitrites, which can impact the hemoglobin molecule that carries oxygen in our blood, converts it to a molecule called methemoglobin, and that does not carry oxygen effectively. So as that methemoglobin increases in their blood, they become less and less able to carry oxygen, which causes something called blue baby syndrome or methemoglobinemia. That's a long answer to say that as the increase of nitrates goes up in our water, that risk increases. As we age, after that 6 months, as we age into adulthood or even early childhood, our bodies are able to manage nitrates more effectively, and also the amount of water per body weight is decreased, so that risk is lower. As an adult, we get most of our nitrates, 60 to 80% of our nitrates from food, and a lot of healthy foods. We'll get high nitrates from spinach, leafy vegetables. So the percentage of nitrates we're getting from water is significantly less, like less than 15% typically. So we're not in the same vulnerability as that high risk group. In the advisory, we've included pregnancy as well as infants up to 1 year. The 1 year piece I'll start with. I think there's some buffer that's required. I think above 6 months, there's a lot of infants that are still bottle fed formula. So again, to provide that safety margin. And also with respect to pregnancy, there's some less conclusive evidence around thyroid function in development. So to protect the fetal development, they are considered a vulnerable population. So those are the reasons those two groups are included. But these short-term exposures of nitrates above that maximum allowable concentration for adults and other healthy individuals isn't the same risk. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. I've got one final one if I could, Mr. Chair.
Quickly.
Is there any onus on the folks that are putting this into the water to curb their activity or to restrain themselves for the amount that they're using?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it really leaves with the provincial agencies like Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture and others to look after and enforce the regulations.
Is that a yes or no?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that it relies heavily on the provincial agencies to go after. And right now, let's say wastewater plant, the wastewater plant discharges high nitrate, it is allowed under the ECA issued to the wastewater plant. So they're not doing anything wrong from that perspective. So it leaves up to the ministry to look at the source protection requirements and decide whether to go and enforce to make sure the high nitrate levels are not being discharged.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Selby. We had this discussion probably 9 months ago. I think we all sat down here and had a discussion, especially Mayor Dyson, when we talked about the nitrates. We discussed where the situation was coming from. I don't know if you can answer this, but real world, the legalities, is this not a GRCA issue? Like, it's trending down towards us. And what responsibility does the GRCA have? What responsibility does the provincial government have? Because if it's our water that's being affected, how's Six Nations dealing with it? How's Haldeman dealing with it? How's the county dealing with it? Are we all looking at spending, $250 million to drink water safely? It's the question.
Through you, Chair, to the first question about who is responsible, GRCA mostly administers or coordinates with the watershed municipalities and various other agencies. It is the province that has more authority to take any action, from passing the regulations, putting limits to various actions. The province that can do anything about this. GRCA obviously can coordinate. Now, with the second question, there are only 3 municipalities take water from the Grand River for drinking water supply: Regional Waterloo, Brantford, and Six Nations. We've included Six Nations in all our meetings with the university professors and ministries and so on, so they're on the same boat with us. Regional Waterloo, being very close to the darker brown areas you saw in the map, they've been dealing with nitrate and other issues for a long time, so they have different treatment processes in place. And also they have groundwater. They're much bigger region and they have groundwater, so they dilute part of the surface water with the groundwater.
Thanks, Selby.
Mayor Davis.
Question, Selby, about the reverse, the reverse osmosis units that you're going to be renting. So you rent one unit, you rent two units, like how many units do you anticipate will be renting?
Through you, Chair, this will be 4 units that we'll be renting. Together with all the 4 units, they'll give us up to 9 million liters of water. So that way, at least it's diluted by 1/3, which means if the level goes from 10 to say up to 14 or so milligrams per liter or 13, we'll have the protection.
Okay, well, first of all, where would you put these units and how do you connect it into our water treatment system as it currently is?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The units will be going, beside the water plant, because the water system is split in half. There'll be 2 trailers on one side, 2 trailers on another. And, the water will feed through them and go back into our, chlorination system.
So it sounds like it's fairly simple to actually connect it into our system.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not as simple as just hooking it up.
Right.
There is a lot of work to be done. But in the end, it should work fairly well.
All right. And again, when do you hope to have that up and running for this winter?
We hope, by the end of February.
And can you give us an example? Let's say the reading in the water is, say it's 9.5. All right. And if you're using the reverse osmosis units, the 4 of them, what would that bring it down to? 6 something, or is it?
Through you, Chair, it'll be 30% dilution roughly. So if it is 10, it'll bring it to 7, something like that.
All right. And you showed us in the slide, one of the options is to address the issue at its source, which is not only water treatment plants, it's also agricultural production. Can you tell us what efforts are being made to address this at its source?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've reached out to many, like the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture and GRCA. The initial response we received was it is a complex watershed, but given that there are so many sources that can discharge, the initial information is it will take time to work with each and every, identify where the most of the nitrate may be coming from and work with those either farming communities or other wastewater operations to reduce it further. They said that it will take time, but that's what the information we received so far, but we are still working with the municipalities and the agencies.
Lastly, in reference to a more permanent solution, you said that there would be an option to apply for various government grants. Who do you apply to? Which level of government? Which ministries?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will apply to provincial and federal funding wherever we are eligible. But right now, we are looking at Canada Housing Infrastructure funding from federal government, which says they can fund up to $100 million, but they pay 40% of the cost and 60% paid by municipality. We are looking at that application is due by end of March. So we are looking to apply for that grant funding. So we are looking always to see opportunities to apply.
And are there any provincial grant funding opportunities, either now or what you expect there might be in the future?
Through you, Chair, we will be looking for, at this moment, I'm not aware, but we are looking for funding opportunities.
Well, that is actually the 20 minutes, unless we have a mover to give more time. Moved by Councilor McCurry, second by Councilor Samwell. How much time till they're completed? Okay. All right. Call the vote.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Pentelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Scully, and Mayor Davis.
Councilor Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So through you, Mr. Chairman, so is this something that's aggravated by ice cover on the river?
Through you, Chair, the ice cover definitely does not help. The more open, without ice cover, that means there is opportunity for light to go through the water and break it down to a certain extent. So usually that's the reason in the summer we have lower levels. And in the winter, we're seeing higher levels of nitrate.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was nitrates or if it was something else, but years ago we had a problem where something was getting quite high in the water. And I asked about a bubble system because the ice made it worse. I asked if a bubble system would help if we keep the canal ice free. And the response I got is, well, that would also help with the problem. So would bubbling air through the water reduce the nitrate level?
Through you, Chair, does not help for nitrate. Like in the past, when we used to have ammonia issues, we would bubble it and it would help. But nitrate is a very small molecule. It likes the water. It wants to stay in the water. It doesn't like to come out. So that's why we need some kind of a stronger technology to take it out of the water.
Okay, it must have been ammonia that they were talking about several years ago when the bubbling would have helped. And in the report, it talks about mixing in source groundwater. Do we have the ability to put groundwater into our water treatment system?
Through you, Chair, we will be going through a study to explore groundwater availability. Right now, the initial investigations or the studies showed that we don't have enough groundwater to totally replace Grand River water with the groundwater within Brantford, like within the water plant. But we may be able to find some to blend it. But again, we need to do investigation to find out. Groundwater has its own negatives, like sometimes they have iron, manganese, sulfur. They may have nitrate as well because we're so close. If we drill wells in our water plant, it is so close to the river. We don't know if we would hit nitrate or not. So there are some uncertainties with the groundwater. And with the groundwater, you may hit a well with a good supply, but then after a while, you may come across some bad contaminants. So there is some uncertainty with the groundwater. That's why we are looking at a permanent solution as the reverse osmosis.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McCreary, you have the floor.
Chair, thank you, and through you to our staff and Grand Erie Health Unit staff. Welcome, Dr. Conley. Could someone indicate briefly what the GRCA role is in this initiative?
Through you, Chair, the GRCA role is more of a coordination, and then they do under Category 2, according to the new rules, they can work on addressing the nitrate issue, but it falls under Category 2. Which means this, whoever different municipalities have to pay for it.
So we are paying for this entirely, is that correct? Unless we obtain grants from other levels.
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
Okay, so is there an opportunity for us to ask the GRCA to ask the other communities in the watershed to share in our costs?
Through you, Chair, that's something we can take it back and explore.
Okay, I think that might be worthwhile, Sylvie. So I think it was indicated the only downstream community at risk is Six Nations.
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
Okay, and they're aware of all of what we've seen in our report and our presentation tonight.
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
Okay. Dr. Conley, you gave a very concise overview of the physiology of this problem. Does this result in any sort of delayed development for children?
with respect, thanks for the question. Specifically methemoglobinemia, which is the outcome of an elevated nitrate level, affects oxygen delivery. So it's typically an acute phenomenon. So it will initially people will develop. They can develop weakness. Infants would develop weakness, potentially shortness of breath, and as it progresses, as the methemoglobin level increases, the symptoms become more severe, and it causes, as I said, the discoloration of the skin. So the maximum allowable concentration is designed to prevent exposures that would cause this to occur. And it's also it probably happens before we consider developmental implications. So certainly if an infant was chronically had a high methemoglobin level, their oxygen level would be impaired, and it would certainly potentially have developmental effects over time, just because their oxygen level would be chronically lower. But certainly we're just as concerned about that short-term impact or the short-term effects that would
In
occur.
terms of long-term, we're just not sure, right?
Yeah, and I think when I mentioned the thyroid implications in fetal development, that I would consider potentially a more long-term risk. That is not as well quantified as the methemoglobin issue is probably the most well understood potential complication.
So, will the concentration of nitrates be reduced by boiling water?
No, and that's a very good question. I'm glad you brought it up. Actually, that has the opposite effect. As we boil water, the concentration of nitrates would increase. So boiling water has the opposite effect. It would actually concentrate the nitrates to a higher level, and it certainly should not be done to make formula. That would make it worse.
So any communication about this should make that clear, right?
Yes, that certainly is included in. We have a sort of advisory at the ready should we need to use it, and that would be included in that.
Gotcha.
And it's also included in we have a frequently asked questions page on our website that talks about nitrates in water, and that is included in that as well. So the public can get more information from our website.
Good show. Good work on this. Well, thank you very much. For Selby and staff, the equipment that we're planning to lease, rent, or buy, is it lease, rent, or buy?
Through you, Chair, it's a rental unit.
Okay. And it's called reverse osmosis,
It has reverse osmosis process membranes. Yeah.
and you find those in stores in the reverse osmosis district, do you?
Through you, Chair, there are only very limited suppliers supply, and
Okay.
especially in a short term. So we found a supplier who can supply us quickly.
And that speaks to the large price tag, I suppose, ultimately. And sorry, we're gonna split it. I didn't understand the discussion about splitting in half. Could you explain that as I run out of time?
Through you, Chair, you mean the dilution?
The need for two machines, I think. was
Oh,
referenced.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the water plant is basically split. It's mirrored on both sides. So, there's 4 filters on one side, 4 filters on another. So we will put 2 trailers and 2 trailers, one on one side, one on the other. So we will be equally taking, the water and putting it through reverse osmosis equally through the plant.
Thank you for that good work.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Selby, thank you for an excellent job as usual. Your department does such great work and provides a lot of confidence in our community of our drinking water. Now, these municipalities upstream from us, they're drawing their water. Some of them are drawing their water from groundwater. Are they discharging into the river from their sewage?
Through you, the Chair, that's correct. Like many communities upstream of us, similar to Brantford, discharge the wastewater, treated wastewater effluent to the Grand River.
Yeah, so they're drawing from one source and contributing back to another source. That's sort of standard. That's acceptable in Ontario, isn't it?
Through you, Chair, yes, it is, because it is the same watershed.
Yeah, but we're drawing from the groundwater, and then it's going. The sewage has a high nitrate issue in it to start with, does it not?
Through you, Chair, it is going into the Grand River because it is the same watershed.
Yeah, but is sewage, does sewage have a high nitrate with it naturally?
Through you, Chair, the wastewater, yes, the sewage has high nitrate. And that is, the sewage, the wastewater plant treats the nitrate, but anything not treated or removed through the wastewater plant process will go into the Grand River.
And the level of nitrates that can be distributed into the river through sewage, is there a limit on that?
There's no limit at this time. Sorry, through you, Chair. Recently, Ministry of Environment, for the first time, put a limit on Haldeman County for their wastewater discharge, but none of the other wastewater plants have a limit for nitrate.
Is that data available for us to gather from other municipalities that are discharging into the Grand River watershed? Is the information about the level of nitrates, is that, I think it's documented, is it not reported, and do we have access to it to find out how much each municipality is distributing nitrates into the river?
Through you, Chair, that information is not that easily available, but we'll reach out to the Ministry of Environment for that information.
Yeah, maybe there's if there's not a limit set, maybe there could be a cost to it, so that those of us that have to clean the nitrates from purge them from the river through this process, that get some funding back for that. Okay, now we used to belong to the Rural Water Quality Program. I think the budget was back Dave, I memory serves me right, about $50,000 a year. Do we still belong to the Rural Water Quality Program?
Through you, Chair, the city withdrew from the program. I think we were part of it from 2002 to 2018. From 2019 on, we withdrew from the program. We're not part of the program anymore.
Yeah, I thought so. And that program was designed to work with farmers in the rural community to prevent things from drifting from farms, nitrates, for example, from fertilizers and other things from farm animals, to prevent that from going into our river. Was that not the intent of that program?
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
And the reason we were involved in it was because we take our water from the Grand River, and it affected us dramatically.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Savi, for the great work that you do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Scully.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. My line of questioning will be pertaining mostly to source water protection. Have we done any, just given that a large percentage of the nitrates are coming from agricultural manure management, have we done any research into if specific types of livestock have more concentrated levels of nitrates, so that we can really zero in on perhaps the culprits upstream?
Through you, Chair, the map I showed, the Grand River map, it does show north of Waterloo, there is intense livestock operations. I also have to clarify that just because they have intense operations doesn't mean they contribute more nitrate. Through the Rural Water Quality Program, there were many initiatives in place, like how to store manure and how to prevent from rainwater going through, washing off, how to make sure the livestock doesn't graze near the river, put buffer plantations and trees. So there are several measures that farm operations could take. So the Rural Water Quality Program is currently in place. Even though the city is not part of it, it is in place, and that is something that GRCA has monitoring.
Sorry, perhaps my question wasn't clear. Do certain types of livestock, for example, poultry, does their manure create higher levels of nitrates than, say, dairy farm cows? Do we know that information?
Through the Chair, I don't have that information, but I would think that it would rely on how intense the farm is, and how many livestock they have and how they store. They may have a very intense operation, but they may have a well-run storage facility, so that may not contribute nitrate. So
understanding that regulation is in place, and I'm sure most people are following that regulation for manure management. I was just curious if there were, specific animals that had higher levels of nitrates. And are we doing anything or any work to investigate the science behind why this is happening and how this is happening? And more specifically, why this is happening at the time of year that it typically is happening, to just fully understand and zero in on how we can perhaps get to the core of the issue.
Through you, Chair. The city met with University of Waterloo professors, who have, some of them have done decades of research on this. So mainly, there's no silver bullet, sorry. So all it is we have to work through monitoring, identify specific areas where nitrate is coming from, and work in the field with the farmers or the locations to actually find some solutions.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Martin for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I missed one of my questions the first time around. Six Nations takes their water from the river. Do they take 100% of their water from the river, or do they blend it with groundwater?
Through you, Chair, I believe it's 100% Grand River water.
Okay. Do you know what they're doing to deal with the nitrate levels?
Through you, Chair, I'm not fully aware, but I know that we've invited them, and they're aware, and they're also looking into options. We've invited them when we had the science or technical session with the university professors, and they were invited by the GRCA along with us when we presented the issue to watershed municipalities to bring them aware of what's going on, what Brantford is dealing with, what Six Nations is dealing with.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Davis for a second time.
Yeah, so I'll be a couple of questions through the chair. The rural water quality program, a lot of that's directed to creating vegetation buffers on streams and tributaries of the Grand River. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, that is one of the measures.
And would you agree with me that that's very effective in screening out phosphorus, which is a very sticky molecule and sticks to vegetation, but it's a challenge with nitrates, correct?
Through you, Chair, those measures are useful. It's just, sorry, Mr. Mayor, if you could say your question again.
My understanding is nitrates dissolve in water like salt.
Right.
And you will find nitrates that will contaminate groundwater systems that are hundreds of feet underground, where there's all kinds of screening because it's like salt. It's very hard to screen out nitrates through a filtering type system, a natural filtering system. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
All right. And isn't the situation in Waterloo where they actually have groundwater with extremely high nitrate levels and they dilute it with water from the river?
Through you, Chair, there are, yes, they do both ways, depending on a time of the year, what the situation.
All right. And the GRCA struck a working group to address this issue of nitrates entering into the Grand River. Is that not correct?
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
All right. And part of the group are these professors from the University of Waterloo who have spent their entire academic life researching the issue of nitrates.
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
All right. And is it not their conclusion that about 80% of the problem in the Grand River watershed comes from agricultural runoff?
Through you, Chair, that's correct. GRCA actually quantified it, and they said around 80% is other sources, and 20% could be wastewater operations.
Right. And do they have any advice in terms of what should be done by way of different or improved agricultural practices to help address this issue?
Through you, Chair, what they've said was this is the knowledge is already there. So it is making sure it is enforced and it is followed. There is Nutrient Management Act that regulates it. The question is education and enforcement of the community.
Right, making farmers aware of best practices for nutrient management.
That's correct.
All right. And do you have an explanation or understanding why there was that spike right before New Year's for a couple of hours? Like, why? What would have caused that? That wouldn't be wastewater discharge.
Through you, Chair, there was a heavy rainfall just before we saw the high levels. So there is a possibility, even I was driving today, I saw on a farm like a pile of manures. So it is possible that when there is manure there, when it is not fully incorporated into the soil, like you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, nitrate like salt, it dissolves right away. So it could wash off from the farm fields or urban areas and everywhere.
And is part of the reason why you don't see high nitrate levels in the summer because when farmers do use manure on their fields, it's quickly absorbed into the soil.
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
All right. And if that's being distributed on a farm field that's frozen, it's not absorbed into the soil and it's a big rain, it flows into the river.
Through you, Chair, I'm not the expert in farm operations, but I can say that the farmers, I would say that they have to, there is a practice of adding in the winter time, so it gets incorporated into the soil, absorbed in the soil. So in the spring, when they go about to do their farming practices, that the soil is ready. But I probably would reach out to experts in that area to actually give more precise information.
So just to end that line of questioning, so there are farming practices that's well researched that minimize the impact of farming operations on nitrate levels in adjoining waterways, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
No
So
till.
making sure or encouraging the producers to follow those guidelines.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Sluss for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the reverse osmosis, will that treat anything else that's in the water or is that strictly for the nitrates?
Through you, Chair, and it's a good question. That is one of the reasons we want to go with reverse osmosis. If you heard about microplastics these days in the news and or any other forever chemicals or anything else that show up in the river water, reverse osmosis is the best technology to remove, even in the future, whatever may come our way.
Does it enhance or change the taste of the water?
Through you, Chair, it's subjective. Some people like RO water, some people don't, but it definitely removes a lot more things from, if I could simple terms, I could say it removes a lot more from the water. And so the solids, if I could call it, or particulate matters, is very, very low in the reverse osmosis water.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Selby, I have one question for you now that everybody else has spoken. We keep talking about removing the nitrates from the water. Is there an option to actually put something to like delete it or neutralize the nitrate that while it's in the water?
Through you, Chair, there is, there is technology exists. It's called ion exchange. So in that process, the nitrate is removed with a different technology. But the reason why that's not the best solution for Brantford is it's only for nitrate or for that kind of parameters, whereas reverse osmosis means it could take out a lot more. If there is algal growth, a lot more things that when algae dies off could be released. Any of those comes our way, reverse osmosis will remove it. So
now, out of curiosity, you mentioned that the reverse osmosis removes about 30%. The ion process, how much would that remove?
To the Chair, the reverse osmosis, what I said was a dilution. So it's not, it removes 95% of what's in there. So what I said 30% is you have water that has nitrate and you have water that has doesn't have nitrate, you mix it, you get 30% dilution because how much the trailer unit could produce. So the 30% is how much dilution we get. But reverse osmosis process is typically designed to remove 95% of the salts or whatever content in it.
Perfect. Thank you, Selby. Councillor Schluss, can you please read the motion and state your seconder to place all separated items for consideration and consent not previously voted on the floor?
Yes, it's moved by myself, seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Caputo, that all items for consideration, consent items 7.1 and 7.2, separated for discussion purposes, be approved.
Thank you. We'll now take up 7.1.1, increasing nitrate levels. And Mayor Davis, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So first of all, I want to assure this community that this issue is extremely important to me and the mayor's office, that it be addressed. When this was brought to our attention, council's attention, it was winter of last year. At that time, the concern was, the trend clearly was increasing nitrates in the river. Our water being safe, our water continue to be safe, but the problem is we know long-term if that trend continues in 6-7 years, it could be a real issue for our community, which you couldn't just address by closing the gates on our water treatment plant for a day or two. So realizing that, I worked with staff, we developed an action plan, and the action plan is, as Selby set out in her PowerPoint, one, addressing the issue where it begins, source issues. Also, two, looking at the options that we have at our treatment plant, which essentially we're drilling groundwater wells or reverse osmosis. Staff have pretty much concluded over the last 6-7 months, reverse osmosis probably is the best option, and that's why they're pursuing that. As mayor, I decided that it was important to bring in other partners in the Grand River watershed to deal with this issue. I've spoken at length to Chief Sherry-Lynn Hill and members of her council, alerting them that this is a growing issue. I met with Chief Sherry-Lynn Hill yesterday, in fact, to discuss it with her. I'm keeping her fully briefed. She's very supportive. I also found out yesterday that actually the county of Haldeman does draw water out of the river as well. So I advised Mayor Bentley, who I met again this morning, of the situation we have here in Brantford that affects all of us. I'm also concerned because I enjoy all of the recreational aspects of the Grand River. In fact, I fish a lot. I think people know that I'm a fly fisher person. And, nitrates is a real concern for the river aquatic life. It over high levels can have an impact on the development of fish. It can create a lot of algae in the river, which makes the river less hospitable for aquatic life. And the river is a tremendous recreational asset. If we don't get the nitrates under control, that puts that in jeopardy as well. The other issue up in Waterloo, they pull a lot of their water as groundwater, but once you get nitrates into your groundwater system, it's very hard to get out. You have to wait decades till it flushes out. And that's the problem with nitrates. It's like salt, it dissolves, and it's very hard to filter it out, either naturally or through processes like reverse osmosis. To deal with the issue of source issues, the delegation of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference last August, we met with the Minister of Infrastructure and the Minister of Environment to alert them that we were seeing this issue in our water and made it known that we would be applying for grants for reverse osmosis systems. I'm told they'll be very receptive to it. I've also worked in myself and Councillor Caputo, where the Brantford representatives in the Grand River Conservation Authority. In the spring, we asked the GRCA to form an action group of all interested stakeholders up and down the watershed, including these University of Waterloo professors who are very interested, an action group to address these source issues and also to, one, better measure what's going on in the river. And because of that, they're already installing other monitoring stations. Just this week, I met yesterday at the Rural Ontario Municipal Conference, Rural Ontario Municipalities Conference. So I'd never gone to because we're not a rural municipality, but I went to have a session, a meeting with the Minister of Agriculture, Minister Fluck, and briefed him on the issue. And we had a very extensive discussion. And I advocated with his ministry and all those officials there. I explained to them that this is a growing issue in our watershed and probably in other watersheds as well, like the Thames Valley watershed, that there needs to be a concerted province-wide action that assists agricultural producers, especially in using best practices to minimize the impact of their operations on surrounding watersheds. And there are best practices that don't affect the productivity and allow them to produce everything that we need from them. But it's really a question, I think, of education, promotion, and also some funding of agricultural best practices. I got to say, I was very pleased with the minister's response. And I can tell you, as your mayor, I pledge I will continue to advocate so long as I'm mayor on this issue, both encouraging staff to deal with it through the options we have to address the issue in our water treatment plant, but also through the watershed and across the province. This is a serious issue that we need to address as a province. It doesn't take just one person or one ministry. It has to be many working together. And I'm optimistic we can do it. We did it with phosphorus. We did it with acid rain. I'm sure we can do it with nitrates. And I'd say this, if we don't do it, you're going to run into the problem they have in some parts of Europe where they're actually, you're neutralizing waterways with high levels of nitrates coming from agricultural operations. So it can be addressed effectively, and I'm sure it will be. Thank you. And thank you for the extended time.
Councillor Sless. Sorry, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just speaking to it, Mayor's covered, most of the things have been covered already. The issue here is we should also be reinstating our funding for the rural water quality program, which was exactly what this was intended for us to mitigate and work to mitigate more nitrates and other things entering our water system because it's our drinking water. I don't believe we should ever abandon it. I didn't support it in 2018 when we moved away from it. We should think about going back to that as well. It's going to be hard to talk to other municipalities up the watershed to support us when they're belonging to it and we're not. So I think we should keep that in mind. And at one time we used to fund the chair of the Waterloo water chair was called back in the day, and that was for studies on water along the Grand River for future use, and it was very beneficial to us because we draw our water from there. And just to the residents of Brantford, our water is safe. It's probably safer than other places where you would buy water, in fact. So I just want everybody to know that we have tremendous staff here at working at our water treatment plant. We've got a wonderful committee that's always on top of this, and that's why this report is here. And we should all have confidence in our drinking water, and that should not be a concern at this point. And the reverse osmosis is the right way to go. That will deal with future things that enter our water system and make our water much better. It's costly now, but it's we've got the money in the budget for it. It's part of your water fees that you pay when you pay for your water bill. So I think it's something well worth doing. I think Selby's done a great job here. Thank you, Selby. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no other questions, call the vote.
Item 711 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventilbor, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Scully, and Mayor Davis.
We'll now move on to 7.1.3. Councillor Martin, you asked to have this separated?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question through to staff. In the financial implications, there's a chart that shows the various costs. And when I look at it, lines 8 through 11 don't appear to have been funded in the original project. That's a contingency, non-recoverable tax, Grandbridge Energy Transformer and connection, and staff project management time. Were those expenses in the original estimate?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Martin. Yes, they were included in the original estimate. It's just with the increased cost through from construction, we're adding in those fees so that we don't lose them, lose sight of them during construction.
So are these all things that have increased in cost?
No, those were set costs. It's just with the increase of construction costs, we're adding those in so that we still have those funds available to pay those fees that will come out.
Okay. So the increase is around 800,000? And is most of that increased construction cost?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Martin, yes, the majority of that is through the increase in the low bid that was received from the tenders.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor McCreary.
Chair, thank you very much. And let me remark upon what a fine job you're doing in the chair tonight, sir. And through you to staff. Jennifer, could you talk about how we will be supervising this project?
Through the chair to you, Councillor McCreary. So there is a project manager that is in charge of this project, and they will be monitoring it throughout construction with construction administration, construction inspection, as well as consulted staff that will be doing some of those inspections as
So
well.
it'll be a city staff member who's in charge of the project.
Correct. There
Have
will
you
be
selected that
consultant
city?
staff and city staff.
Have you selected the staff member yet?
That is correct. Yes, we do have, this person has been on the project from the very beginning until now and will carry it through the construction stage.
And so we'll be responsible for approving or denying change orders.
That is correct.
That's very good news. And in terms of our selection of the successful bidder, was it a pre-qualification process?
Through the chair to you, Councillor McCreary, no, this went out for public tender, so we did not pre-qualify
Okay.
contractors.
And how many plan takers do you recall?
Not off the top of my
Okay.
head, but I can pull that up for you.
Would you say it would be a few?
Yes,
Okay, that's sufficient. Thank you very much for this.
you're welcome.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just the staff then, are you experiencing the same kind of increase in construction costs across other projects in the city? This seems to be normal.
Through the chair to you, Councillor Carpenter, yes, unfortunately, it is becoming the norm.
Yeah, and I guess, so are we seeing similar cost increases, say, for example, for the police station? I know we are for John Noble, so.
Yes, through the chair to you, Councillor Carpenter, yes, we're seeing it across the board on all of our facility projects as well as our linear infrastructure projects.
So this is the new normal for what the cost of building is going forward.
Unfortunately.
Well, we'll be updating this on our capital forecast going forward when we look at our capital needs.
Through the chair to you, Councillor Carpenter, yes, we do add that from what we're seeing from costs coming in, we are adding that increase as each year goes on, which as you can see in this year's budget, we did have to reduce some of the projects.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, Jen, through you, Chair, sorry. So if I'm reading this correctly, we actually saved $700,000 from the Sanderson Center project, and that was put into a fund, and then those monies from our fund are coming out. So is this project really the 800,000? Is it $100,000 on top, or is it 800,000 with the 700,000 on top?
So through the chair to you, Councillor Caputo, there was some surplus in a Sanderson Center project. So because of the tight finances, we need to try to see where we have surpluses. So we're releasing the surpluses that are in the Sanderson Center account. We need to adjust it, but yes, it is 100,000 roughly on top of what we have saved on the Sanderson Center.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions, call the vote.
Item 713 carries on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those councilors voting in favor, Councilors Venkelberg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Slats, Caputo, Sullivan, Scully, Mayor Davis, noting Councilor Martin was out of the room at the time of the vote.
And now we're on to resolutions. We have one resolution. Councillor Sluss, would you please move it and state your seconder?
Just trying to find it here, Mr. Chair. There we are. Okay, moved by myself, seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Caputo. Whereas the city of Brantford offers an annual property tax rebate program for eligible registered charities occupying commercial or industrial property. And whereas the rebate for eligible registered charities is set at 40% of the annual property taxes on property it occupies. And whereas an eligible registered charity must submit a property tax rebate application annually, no earlier than January 1st of the year and no later than the last day of February of the year following the taxation year to be considered for the rebate. And whereas the Brant United Way is a registered charity occupying commercial property of the city of Brantford, and whereas the Brant United Way has not submitted an application for the property rebate since 2019 tax year, and whereas the Brant United Way intends to apply for the rebate for the 24 tax year prior to February 28th deadline, therefore be it resolved that the Brant United Way be reimbursed the amount of $9,902.67, representing retroactive charity rebates for the years 2020 through to and including 2023. If I can speak to that just very briefly, Mr. Chair. You can tell by the dates, it was COVID affected their staffing, and it affected the amount of people that they had employed. And I believe my understanding was that there was some changes in staffing during that period, and the forms that were to be filled out were not filled out, and unfortunately they fell behind and were not receiving what they were rightly due. So this just catches them back up to date and puts them where they should be, and it's actually when the number was determined by Treasury, the $10,000, they already have a number of allocations where that money is desperately needed in the community for the work that they do. So I would hope everybody would support the United Way and approve this resolution, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. So as soon as I saw the dates, I thought, yeah, it must be COVID. My question is, because we had something similar last year, how come we are able to reach back 4 years in this particular case, but we were only able to go back 18 months in the previous case?
Through the chair, my memory's a little foggy about last year's incident, but I do recall that was an application made under section 357 of the Municipal Act. So that was something different. It was with regards to the applicant suggesting there was a gross or manifest error, I believe, in the calculation of their taxes. So it's a bit of a different situation than this.
It was a church charity. Like it was a church. So do they get rebates, or do they work in 100% rebate rate? Is that it?
Churches are generally exempt.
Exempt. So it's not a
So
rebate.
they're exempt, not a rebate.
So these are two separate processes.
Yes.
So now if I could just dial in on this, how are we allowed longer than 4 years? Is there a limit to how long we can go back in a rebate process? And is that done directly by the city?
No, there's certainly not a limit. The act does allow for the rebates. There's not, say, a time limit imposed on sort of retroactively providing this rebate. It does require the approval of council. And given that it is a charity, not-for-profit kind of situation, there is not any bonusing implications with this either.
Thank you.
Call the vote.
Item 8.1 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor: Councillors Van Tilburg, Samuel, Carpenter, McCreary, Martin, Salas, Caputo, Sullivan, Scully, and Mayor Davis.
And Councillor McCreary, can you please read the title of your two notices of motion?
Mr. Chair, absolutely. Thank you. Item 9.1, the review of the Municipal Code of Conduct, Chapter 16. 9.2, honorarium of Committee of Adjustment members.
And please note, the notice of motion deadline for council agenda is Thursday, January 23rd at 9 a.m. We are adjourned.